You may have been told, directly or indirectly, that you are too much, too intense, too sensitive, too thoughtful, too emotional. Sometimes these messages were explicit, other times they were subtle. A raised eyebrow, a sigh, a suggestion to calm down or tone it down. Over time, these moments can accumulate. They begin to shape how you see yourself. You may start to monitor your reactions, to soften your expressions, to question whether what you feel is appropriate. Not because your feelings are wrong, but because you learned they were inconvenient. Being told you are too much often has little to do with you. It usually reflects a limit in the environment around you. Some spaces are narrow. Some people have limited capacity. Some situations leave little room for depth. When your presence exceeds that capacity, it can be labeled as excess. But intensity is not the same as excess. Intensity is engagement. It is aliveness. It is the willingness to experience things fully. You feel deeply because you are attentive. You think carefully because meaning matters to you. You respond strongly because you are present. These qualities are not mistakes. You may have learned to shrink yourself in response, to hold back enthusiasm, to dampen emotional honesty, to filter your thoughts before sharing them. This shrinking often happens quietly. It feels like maturity, like self-control, like being considerate. But over time, it can feel like self-abandonment. You may notice a sense of distance from yourself, as if you are living at a reduced volume, as if something essential is being held back. This holding back can create exhaustion, not the kind that sleep resolves, but the kind that comes from constant suppression. You are not too much for having depth. You're not overwhelming for having sensitivity. Sensitivity is not fragility. It is responsiveness. You respond to nuance, to emotional undercurrents, to meaning beneath the surface. This responsiveness can feel intense in environments that prefer simplicity, but that does not make it wrong. You may worry that if you stop holding back, you will overwhelm others, that your presence will be disruptive, that you will be rejected. These fears are understandable, especially if you have been misunderstood before. But becoming less does not guarantee safety. It only guarantees distance from yourself. You are allowed to take up space in your natural proportions. You are allowed to feel strongly without apologizing for it. You may still choose when and where to express yourself fully. Context matters. Safety matters. Choice is different from suppression. Suppression comes from believing your full self is unacceptable. Choice comes from honoring both yourself and the situation. You do not need to edit your essence to be allowed connection. There are spaces where your intensity will feel natural, where your depth will be welcomed, where your presence will feel grounding rather than overwhelming. These spaces may not be everywhere, but they exist. You do not need to force yourself to fit where you do not belong. You may notice a habit of self-checking, scanning others for signs of discomfort, adjusting yourself before anyone reacts. This habit often develops as protection. It helped you navigate earlier environments. But it does not need to govern you forever. You are allowed to relax that vigilance. You do not need to preempt rejection by becoming smaller. You may discover that when you stop shrinking, your energy feels steadier. Your thoughts flow more freely. Your presence feels more grounded. This does not mean everyone will meet you fully, but it does mean you will meet yourself. You are not responsible for managing others' comfort at the expense of your integrity. You are allowed to be emotionally present without explaining yourself. You are allowed to care deeply without justifying it. You are allowed to be affected by what happens around you. Being affected is not weakness, it is connection. You may notice moments when you still feel like too much, when your reactions feel larger than the situation, when emotions move quickly. These moments do not define you. They are expressions of a system that feels deeply. You do not need to correct them immediately. You can allow them to pass without judgment. Judgment adds weight. Acceptance allows movement. You're not too much, because you notice what others overlook, because you feel what others bypass, because you think beyond the surface. You are simply tuned differently. There's no correct setting for being human. You may still choose softness. You may still choose restraint. But let those choices come from self-respect, not from fear of being too much. You do not need to disappear to be safe. You do not need to become smaller to be loved. You are not too much. You are exactly as much as you are. And that is not something to fix. It is something to allow.